saying women are more naturally, that we're going to discuss, by the way, the stereotyping that women are more nurturing. But they did see about they say they're more compassionate, and they saw women as being more organized. They're more systematic, more in detail. Also, therefore, I'm taking from my last class and just kind of cautioning the women here, saying that, the zoom in, zoom out perspective. The fact that women are more zoomed in, right? They're more systematic, more organized. So therefore, I mean, the caution that you also have to be zoomed out. The reason I'm saying is, I'll tell you later how they saw men being different. The third thing they said, which is I think is a warning and a red flag, is that they said when it comes to innovation, when it comes to ambition and being decisive, men were found to be seen stronger. So in terms, and this other study also, so when they're saying innovation, they're saying that in terms of openness of taking a risk, taking a chance, and openness of taking a decision, therefore, and was more for men. They were less ambitious also, and also decisiveness. Men were seen to have that thing of taking a decision and living up with the consequences. Okay, if it goes fine, it's okay. If it doesn't go fine, that's also fine. Right? Decisions, if you take a decision, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But women were not as decisive. Right? They would not take a decision firmly, strongly, and be okay with whatever the consequences that came with it, accept it in an unemotional way. So that is the difference that was found. Further, there's another study that is done. It's a 2015 study, which also gives it a little more sort of difference, where he said that, again, I mean, it's very similar, and interestingly, most of the studies point to these kind of differently done for different reasons, but they do tend to show these 2 or 3 traits which are different. This study said that when it comes to openness to new experience, they were mostly explorers, not focused strongly on it. And the largely motive that was found was to get included with others, not in terms of being a visionary, as much as being curious about, to some extent, as to what it is, and also get included with the others. Right? It was more in terms of an inclusion in the group rather than being curious to try and understand what it is. To some extent, it was curiosity, but not that much. They were largely just as explorers. In terms of being conscientious, they were very focused, extremely organized, ambitious. They were conscientious. They had high achievement. The leaders, right? Female leaders. In terms of being an extrovert, there was an ambivalence, in the sense they balanced solitude and social interaction. And the motive was largely, the strong motive, the personal power that they were drawing from was power. Right? The fact of establishing their expertise and their power there. In terms of agreeableness, this was very interesting. They were negotiators, right? They didn't sort of say yes or no, but rather they negotiated. Okay, fine. So they were extremely comfortable with you winning as well as I winning. That was the power that they got on the scene, rather than saying that, no, if I win, you lose. That ego was not there. They negotiated very nicely. In that sense, I've written this on the side, saying participative versus transformational. This is also similar things that other studies have seen, that women are largely have a participative leadership. They're comfortable with a win-win, and that is why the whole concept of organizational excellence. They don't ruffle unnecessarily feathers. They don't have false egos. They don't play power dynamics, and in that is why the organization thrives. Right? Intelligence-wise, both are equally strong, but the expertise that they bring onto the table is a little different. This is what was shown in the study. Somebody, let's keep track of 10:30. Okay, it's another 15 minutes. Okay. So, Harish, will you keep track of time? Because 10:30, Niladri, Mr. Majumdar will join. We need to be alert on that.
Sure, madam.
Yeah, please respond immediately as soon as you join. We'll stop.
Okay.
Okay, so now coming to where do the differences come from? I'm hoping that after my first slide, he will join and we'll start, because I don't want to get into any of this before we get the man's perspective as well. Right? Because we need to have a very neutral stand towards this kind of a very tricky topic, where we are boxing the whole concept of leadership in a very gender orientation. So where do the differences come from? So if I will start looking at, so So of course there are these gender differences, biases that were there, and they were very in your face. The first generation biases were very in your face, right? People were talking about it openly. They were very obvious. What's happening right now, that this is the second generation gender bias that we experience, right? In a very in a general way, they're actually a very neutral environment that women face. That's a reality, and India is really strong on it. I mean, while we would like to believe that the Western world is more egalitarian, the reality is that no. I mean, the more I have sort of interacted worldwide, more I have realized that India is as strong and as backward. It really is like that. And it's not as if Indian men are, more culturally, because of culture, tradition, more non-supportive of women. It's nothing like that. Actually, we are as good or as bad as any other this country. So what women, and therefore we do have neutral workplaces. What women face is actually referred as second generation gender bias. It refers to practices that may appear neutral but are discriminatory because they reflect the values of the gender who created the setting. I'll just give you a simple example, right? For example, I mean, I'm starting from a very small, trivial example that, women are expected to stay late. A lot of times it happens that men stay up till 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the night, and women feel the pressure to do the same. Right? Now, where is this value coming from? Men don't want to go home, face all of this. There are several their own psychological issues. Do you think they're working extra? Please. I mean, there's enough and more studies to show that 8 hours of work is maximum, 4 to 5 is maximum you can put in. No person is, whatever the gender, is geared to put 12 hours, 15 hours a day. It does not happen. Then why 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? There are other social and psychological factors. But what happens, because it reflects the value of a gender which can afford to do this because there's somebody else looking after the rest of the responsibilities, women get kind of caught in this particular thing. This is called the second gender, for example. The other example is you expect it to be assertive, right? Because it's a basic understanding that leaders need to show power. So as a leader, if I'm a woman who's taking charge, I need to show assertiveness. I cannot be collaborative because men by nature are seen to be more aggressive and assertive. That is how the whole power dynamics has started getting played for decades and centuries. So now that value is come to this gender also, thinking that no, you have to be assertive. So if you're collaborative, you're seen as meek. And the other point is that if you were assertive because of gender stereotyping, you're seen as aggressive. So it's a funny kind of a circle that goes on where if you're collaborative, you're seen as meek and not as a good leader. But if you are assertive, you're seen as aggressive because there's when stereotyping starts coming in, and those kind of unintentional game that starts getting played that happens at the workplace. The second is reworking the role identities. Oftentimes women, and when they want to progress as leaders and they're moving towards this, they have to actively deny their role of primary caregivers to succeed. So they don't have to say. So if a man says, my wife is unwell, I'm going home, that will not be read anything in any way. But a woman says, my child is unwell, I have to go home, instantly there's a value that is put to that. Just try it out. I have seen it several times that happens. Two of our professors whose wives were not well and they have this thing, it was just taken very, very neutrally. But a woman faculty who said that, no, I'm going to work from home more than normal because I have a small child, it became an issue. In the sense, it was highlighted, oh, she's working from home because she has a small child. Well, the other guy is also working from home because his wife is unwell. How is it that did not get highlighted? So those kind of small things, and I'll tell you how it works, frankly. If you'll see on the right side, I have written, interestingly, women who recognize this hidden gender biases are more successful. And trust me, I'm talking my personal experience, that's true. So I'll just tell you honestly. I have right now. I head the policy center. I head a few committees. I'm part of committees. All of this, and I have done this. I have two daughters. My younger one, in fact, is in the 5th standard. She's quite small, and she requires a lot of my attention. But I never bring this kind of role ever to my workplace. So I also work from home, by the way. But it's always because there's more peace and quiet and I can concentrate better at home. That is the argument I give. I have another female colleague who's frankly far more publishes better than me. She has huge amount of grants. I can't even tell you the amount of grants she has from big trusts for research. But she upfront says that I'm working from home because her son is also the same age as my daughter, because he comes home at 2 o'clock and I have to be there. And that gets read very differently. And I know that this difference that I have, where I have denied this role at my workplace, whereas she who upfront says that this is what I'm doing the same action, by the way, but I'm putting it in a different way. And we're both working at home. It's not that we are sitting at home, we're definitely working from home. But what happens is when you're around, you can also concentrate to ensure, you get up, see to the child. And I'm sure a woman will understand how it helps when you're working from home versus when you're away from that context. So, but I see the difference. I see the difference in how I am perceived and what are the roles that I get ahead and the roles that she gets. Right? And that is what I'm talking of in terms of the second generation gender bias. Right? Then the third thing also that another example comes is that, because there are more male colleagues, subconsciously women feel intimidated. While they may be intelligent, they're progressing, but there's a bit of a hesitation that is there because there are more male colleagues around who are talking in a different language, they have their own networking, and women get, in that sense, left behind. Now, the point is that men don't do it intentionally. You have to understand that it's not intentional. I mean, if there are several women and there are few men, that same thing would happen the other way around, by the way, right? But because we are focusing on women, I'm just kind of putting it on this. But the subconscious intimidation can also happen the other way around, right? So some of these issues are there. I'll just quickly check time. Okay, we have 7 minutes. So what happens is, because of the subtle and unintentional nature of the second order gender biases that are there, people may either deny or be unaware of the barriers, and therefore also the rewards and opportunities that come with it. I'm a live example of that. Right? For me, I recognize this hidden gender bias long time back, and I work to ensure the role of my primary caregiver as a mother. I'm sure people don't know I have a child that's small. Actually does not come to the workplace at all, right? And to give attention there, I have worked around this whole thing in a different way. And the rewards and opportunities that I have got versus someone who's not done it, there is a difference. This is a distinct difference. So these are some of the things I said that happens that, because of this, oftentimes women don't recognize it. They are unaware of these barriers that are coming in. And also what happens is, at the workplace, these kind of debates are no longer legitimate. They're no longer looked at as relevant to be discussed or talked about. And that is what women in the 21st century face in terms of one of the gender issues that's coming in. So some of these interesting things that I found from INSEAD Knowledge. So as woman said that I can't be 6'3", handsome with a firm handshake, but that's the image people have when they think of power and influence. Similarly, another quote here says, women have to reconcile contradictory messages. They are being told, go for it. But when they do, they are told they're too abrasive and have sharp elbows. Women always get feedback that their style is somehow not quite right. And the reason is because of the fact that the values of this particular leadership have become values driven by a certain gender. So therefore, assertiveness versus collaborativeness, that is the example of this particular thing about style and getting their feedback that the style is not correct, because we've got used to a certain kind of definition of what leadership is all about. Then coming to, okay, this, I think hopefully this will close and then Niladri would join. Yeah. The other is gender stereotyping, putting an attribute of view to a person just because of their gender, right? For example, women are always seen as nurturing, having more empathy, and if you don't have it, it's a bit of a shock to people, right? Men are always seen as more aggressive, higher need for power. So men who don't have that, who are more nurturing, more empathetic, are not seen, people find it difficult to view them, or they're seen as different, they get highlighted. Of course, in the 21st century, they're seen as progressive men. But the point is that it gets highlighted. It's not taken as natural. Similarly, women who are not nurturing or don't have very high emotional, who are not very emotional or very empathetic, then they get highlighted as being different. That is what gender stereotyping is happening these days. And of course, I mean, this just is another point that.
Madam, sorry to Sir has joined
Okay.
us.
So Mr. Majumdar has joined. So I'll just finish this. Okay, I think I'll stop after gender stereotyping. So just one last sentence, and then we'll go to our speaker. So just the last part of gender stereotyping. Often, I mean, this is a general comment that a lot of times relationships also go wrong because we attribute wrong stereotyping, right? We expect these expectations that we have from relationships and wrongful stereotyping, which also may sometimes make the relationships go wrong, not only in workplace, in personal lives as well. Right? From here, I'll stop sharing, and our speaker has joined. Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Majumdar, for joining. Can you hear me? Niladri, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly. Hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
So since I'm alone, I'll take off the mask with your permission.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sir, this is Harish, coordinator of this program. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. I think we feel proud to have you on this platform, sir. I welcome you, sir.
Pleasure for being in this platform as well. And also, we've been dealing with it in our workplaces on a daily basis. And yeah, it is one of the most important topics, I think, not just in India, but in the rest of the world as well.
So thank you so much for joining me. I'll just give a quick introduction again about our speaker. So here we have Mr. Niladri Majumdar. He's the president and COO of Seiko Watches Corporation. I think we all know Seiko Watches very well. And he has spent about 12 years in the watch industry. He was with Titan for a long time. And he's taken on various responsibilities, including sales, marketing, and retailing, as well as international business. He has worked in both the sectors, the watch sector as well as the jewelry division. And so Mr. Majumdar actually joined Seiko about a decade back. It's in 10 years, and he had joined as the sales and marketing head. And around 2016, he became, I think, the first Indian to be president and CEO of in Seiko Watches, and we're very proud to have you here. And thank you so much for being here, Mr. Majumdar. I should also sort of say that he has a master's in business administration from Sheffield University, UK, and one of the biggest draw that was there of getting Mr. Majumdar was the fact that he has high international exposure. He on a regular basis deals with international organizations and people from various countries, including Europe, US, Japan, and of course India. And with so many decades of experience in the international arena, I think he's the best person, and of course a male, as I said, to talk about women in leadership and in organizations from his perspective, and how typically men see it. So welcome again, Mr. Majumdar, and it's over to you now.
Okay, so I'm going to make this very comfortable and hopefully interesting for you all. Like I've mentioned to Dr. Angela, for me, working with a man or a woman in the workplace, there is no difference, truly. Depends also on the overall environment that we have in the workplace that we work in. So I'm going to tell you 3 stories. It's going to be a very informal storytelling session instead of giving the typical gyan that we keep hearing from all sources. So I'm going to talk about my experience, and that's what I think I can draw from. So, not the beginning of my career. For everyone, when you're most influenced, most liable to be influenced by the people who you are or who have been your bosses, colleagues, friends, whoever. And I will start with that. So when I started, Angela has already spoken about my stint at Titan, which was great 14 years, if you ask me. And when I started, I was just out of college. And I had that really influenced me later in life. The influences, huge. Now, this was a person who, and like Angela said, I was in the sales and marketing field. So I was just a sales training, which is, the absolute bottom rung of an organization that they as far as sales and marketing is concerned. And I'm proud that started from there, and I could learn on the way as I grew in life, my experience and my both on and off the workplace. So this person I'm referring to, person who used to break all kinds of stereotypes. This was a person who used to travel with us, and we used to work like Bihar, Jharkhand. In those days, there were no.
Niladri, can I please interrupt? Your voice is breaking, so you may have to switch off the camera for better connectivity.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No problem at all. That better?
Yeah, hopefully, yes. Please
okay,
start.
Yeah. So I'll speak as loud as possible. So this person, we used to go out in buses, public buses. We used to take watches in boxes. We used to stop at, all kinds of hotels and all kinds of places. It's funny to note that call was also something that we took into consideration, and we used to go into the nearest field. Various weird or not so healthy, not so safe places to go out to the not to sell our products. And there was this person who used to lead us. And this person used to travel with us. And this person used to do the same things that we used to do. And this person was a person by the name of Jayashree Mohanka, who was a lady.
Niladri sir, sorry to interrupt.
Salesperson. Jayashree was, Harish. Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, sir. Actually, there is a voice break from your end. If you don't mind, would you be able to use headphone? Something like
I'll just have to check. So, Angela, do you carry on? I will have to collect. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I request madam to proceed further for a while.
Yeah, yes.
No problem. Yeah, okay, fine. So, okay, I think we'll just wait for a minute, and I'm sure that is okay. We'll just wait for a minute for him to put the headphones. And I actually find this a lot with these paid subscriptions of Google and other options. The unpaid versions are always a little better, because in paid versions of Google Invite or even Zoom, when many people join, the system starts crashing. Whereas when in the unpaid version, the system where it's free, the system is always better. So, I mean, I've faced this in all platforms, frankly.
Is this better now? Is it better now?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes, Neil. Yeah. Yes.
It's better now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll continue then, if you can hear me.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
So going back to my story, so there was this person who used to travel with us, who used to bear with all the hardships that we as salespeople and men, so-called men, tough men, used to bear up with. And we never felt whether it was in the workplace or anywhere else, that she was anything different. Here was a lady who, could do everything a man can do. She was soft and kind, as you expect, typically, culturally, we expect a woman to be, as well as she could be really, really tough. I've never seen a tougher lady in the workplace than her. And this I'm saying after 20 plus or 25 plus years of experience in corporate life. So talking about a woman and saying that anything is different between a man and a woman is very wrong. I think it depends on various things. So what Jayashree taught us and what Jayashree did was she broke the gender stereotype that we keep talking about. She did things that people usually attribute men will do or only men can do. And a lot of us suffer from this misconception that, there are certain things that a man should do and there are certain things that a woman should do. And nothing can be farther from the truth, at least in the workspace. In the workspace, Jayashree taught me and the rest of us that, you are a person who's working for the company, irrespective of your gender or any of the divisions that we keep putting in our minds. So that is one example that I saw and I admired and I followed. And I've seen many Jayashrees in my life, in my later corporate life. Anjula was talking about my international experience. So I have a story from that as well. We are talking about a country, and from my company, you'll know that it's Japan, where there are a lot of, cultural barriers, perhaps, that somehow limit women to reach the levels of success in corporate life that men achieve. I'm not saying that, it is to be very frank, in the corporate world, quite a patriarchal society there. But I've seen people at Seiko, I've seen two different kinds of people, working women. I've seen another lady called Teruo Ishimaru. Here was a lady who started off as a senior manager at Seiko. And typically what happens in various Japanese organizations is that the ladies rise to a certain level and then don't go beyond that for whatever reason. But she didn't let herself be, held back. Seiko is not a company that does that. Seiko always promotes equality, and whether it's gender or, it's equal for us. It doesn't matter which gender you belong to. But despite that, here was Teruo Ishimaru, who broke all those stereotypes and today is a board member of Seiko Watch Corporation. Now, that is the kind of woman we are talking about. So a lot is to do with what the woman also thinks they can do. So breaking all kinds of barriers, whether it's cultural, whether it's, self-imposed, whether it's thought process imposed, is things that I've seen women do throughout my corporate career. I'll take another third example. Now, this is about a lady who throughout her life after getting married, she was a very accomplished lady. She was first class first in the legal profession when she studied in law. She's done advertising, she's done all kinds of stuff. But when that lady got married, and that happens with a lot of women in today's world, when the lady got married, she thought it fit to travel with her husband, to be with her husband, and to help in the development of her husband's career. That husband, of course, went on to be chairman, board member of various multinational organizations in India and the rest of the world. And no small role was played by that lady who was working behind the scenes. Now, we consider that for certain people, that is considered, that's the role, the support role that the woman should play. But when she reached an age of 58, she realized that she had done that part of her, life's responsibilities, which is taking care of the children. And she thought that she would give vent to her needs of becoming a successful career woman or contributing more to society. So this lady, who till 55 was a homemaker, and please understand that a homemaker's job is as difficult or more difficult than any corporate job I've seen. And I can vouch for it. If my wife says tomorrow, you have to do this and I will only handle the corporate world, I will be flummoxed. But of course, I think we shouldn't be gender stereotyping men as well out here. So I will somehow manage to break through that and do it if the time comes. But there was this lady which I'm talking about who broke through all that and started teaching underprivileged children. Today, she is a principal of a school which teaches 400 underprivileged children in the city of city of Gurgaon in Delhi. And these underprivileged children are the children of home workers, of not the privileged of society. And she's the principal of that school. Not only that, she also teaches the police department in Delhi. She teaches their officers, she teaches them English, communication skills, and so on and so forth. So thinking that, an age can be a barrier, which a lot of people, men or women, irrespective, do, is also wrong. Age is never a barrier, and you can break out of what you're doing today and move on to your dreams and the things that you want to do at any point in life. And that goes, I feel, the same way for men and women. Now, this lady happens to be my sister, so I know a lot about her. What these three things typically show us is that, first, this is the most important part, I would say. Any country and society can only achieve their potential when the women do so. The one thing I think we have to do is something that we should stop doing. So hear me right. The one thing that we have to do is to do something that we should stop doing. We need to stop being afraid. Very strange. Why are we afraid? So women or men, we need to stop fearing and limiting ourselves. On the other platform, the men who are important in the woman's lives also need to stop being afraid. Afraid that their wives or their team members will outshine them, perhaps. Afraid of what society might say if my daughter becomes a model or a film star. Afraid of women becoming more powerful than men. So I would say, let us stop being afraid. Rabindranath Tagore has said in his Where the Mind is Without Fear and the Head is Held High, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Those are the walls all around us today that we have to break, men or women. So from my experiences in my personal life and in the corporate life, I would say, let us awake to this day of people operating without any of these fears. Jayashree showed us that breaking gender rules is possible in the corporate space. The lady from Japan showed us that you can even break cultural and social norms. And my sister showed us that you can do it at whatever age that you deem fit. So these are some of the experiences that I would like to share with you. In my corporate life, in my experience in the corporate space, there are a lot of challenges that women face when they come into work. It truly depends on how not afraid they are, which helps them, break the barriers and move forward. And the men around them, the men who are working with the women in that workplace have as much of a responsibility as the women themselves to break those barriers and make sure that there is no fear in working with that person, in interacting with that person, and in treating him or her the same way as we do anyone else. Yeah, Angela, thank you. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm open to any questions if you have. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Deep. This was very, very interesting and a very new perspective. And what you correctly saying, I think I'll take on the third point that you had said of stop being afraid. Not only for women, right, to saying that not to be afraid to break any of these cultural, social, or other barriers, but also for men to be not afraid of women, right? The fact that there's a woman doing well, to get out of it. And third, as a role of a father or a husband, also at that role itself, not being afraid, letting it be. If there is a natural a tendency for, or there's a woman who's rising higher, I think you should not be afraid. That was a very, very interesting point that you made. And so there are one or two questions. Can I have them started? So I'll
just interrupt here for a minute. You know, in India, we keep hearing the statement, you know, ye beti to mera beta jaisa hai.
Correct.
You know, whenever the girl achieves something, there's a tendency of parents to say this. You know, perhaps older parents or parents who are not in this room, but there are certain factions which do that. I'm waiting for the day when a parent would actually say, "Ye beta to mera beti jaisa hai," and that would be the day where we would have broken all kind of gender stereotypes, and it would be a perfect world for us.
That's excellently said. That's very, very nicely said. Excellent. So, okay, then we'll open it to questions now. So I would request Vidu to actually open the mic, and can you please unmute and ask your question? I'm not clear what you mean by your question. Vidu, are you there? Can you please unmute and ask your question? We'll wait. Let me see. Is he coming in? I can't see him here. Anyway, so the question, okay, so Niladri, the question here is that what can we learn from the case study of Ms. Chandana Kochar, ex-ICICI chairman? Again, I'm just sort of putting one, it's just a sentence attached to it, that because it was a woman, it got severely highlighted in a very different way. That, see, you know, one aberration, and it's become a whole kind of a gender stereotyping there. And given that that her case study has become really strongly highlighted because of, you know, as a gendered kind of a case study. What do you have to say to it?
See, you know, I agree to a certain extent. I don't agree to a certain extent here. I think today we have a media which is looking for news from every source. And, you know, taking one example, I don't think is the right way to go about this. I think you should look at the whole gamut of achievement that has happened across corporate life as far as women are concerned. You know, there is Arundhati Bhattacharya, who was again from a bank, right? And she did so spectacularly well. I would not like to, you know, discuss any individual at this meeting, but overall, I would say that for, you know, things which are wrong or interest people get highlighted. If that person is successful, and it is irrespective of men and women, I think, to a great extent, if that person is successful, I think the overall world takes a little bit of pleasure at seeing that person being put down. As far as women are concerned, I don't think the Chanda Kochar case proves anything or doesn't prove anything. It's just another case, and it should be discussed and debated in another forum in all its merit, perhaps. But as far as women are concerned, I don't think, or the capability of women, or the capability of women to hold high places in the corporate world or in any world, you know, which country is better than India to show us that? You know, we've had Indian prime ministers who've been women. We still have a leader of the opposition who's lady. Not just in India. Look at our entire subcontinent. Our entire subcontinent, which is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, actually has shown that Pakistan, for that matter, how many women premiers do we have? And why do we still doubt women after that? Or the capability of women? It's strange. It's very strange. You know, we have so many women premiers. We pray to the goddesses, you know, for salvation, for mercy, for all of this thing. But when it comes to real life, we want to put them into little cages or little brackets. So I think overall, our history, our society has shown us that women can break every barrier from Rani Lakshmibai to everywhere. But we somehow avoid those histories. We somehow want to avoid those examples and harp on ones where perhaps there is a little bit of weakness shown. But weaknesses are there in me, you, and everyone. You know, it doesn't matter which gender you are from, what color, race, everything. Weaknesses are there in all of us. And to say that it's there because she's a man or she's a woman, I think is a wrong statement.
Thank you so much. That was excellently put. Now, there's one more question related to what you have said. So, do you see internationally, have you seen a difference in the way men behave and men sort of look at or operate around women versus, say, India or Asia? Internationally, what has be your experience been?
Yeah. So internationally, like I said, in the traditional companies, perhaps when I started long back, there used to be, if you went into a conference room or a boardroom or with very, very senior people and there was a woman, there used to be a little bit of a wow factor, Okay, that's great. She's here and wow, she's done extremely well. So it was a mixture of admiration and surprise. It was a mixture of, feeling that she must be fantastic because she's made it this far, and also surprised because, oh, that's great. There is a woman here. And I think that is gone today. For the last 2 decades, internationally, I don't see it happening. Everywhere that I have been to, and I've interacted with companies in South America, as far off in South America, in the US. I used to handle businesses for Titan in South America, US, in Europe, all these other countries. Dignity of labor is such a concept there that this thing of gender stereotyping is not there or far less, and I think that is not a concern at all. How men behave with women, of course, they have to maintain the basic decorum that is part of any office or corporate life. But you can do things like pat the man at the back, but will you do it to a woman? I don't know. Perhaps Anjula would be a better person to talk about that. But in general workspace where you don't require that kind of interaction, I don't see any difference today in the way men or women interact with people of the other gender.
Okay, thank you so much. So there's one last question, which actually is taking in several questions that are coming up. So I'll just sum it up in one question in that sense. That why are men afraid to? I mean, there are a lot of questions that are coming on mindset and transparency, etc. So I'm just putting it in one question, saying that what is that mindset, or why are men afraid to let women progress or let them take charge or let them move forward? What actually happens? Why is it men when women are doing better, or their own, say, spouses or their daughters or their colleagues?
See, I think it's a lot to do with saying that, when we look back many decades, perhaps not now, but when we were kids, not in our families, but in many families in India, perhaps you would have a scene where, oh, isko to ye khana hai. If there's a protein in the house, the man should get the protein, right? Because he needs it, because he needs the power, he needs the strength, he needs the force to go forward and take the family forward. I've seen families most of the families I've seen don't believe in that. For them, a man and a woman, a child who is a girl or a boy, makes no difference. The same amount of importance is given to both, the same amount of training, love, everything is similar. But there have been cases, let's not ignore that, in India where it's been traditionally, okay, the man is the guy who will take the family history, the family this thing forward. Ladki to kuch din ke liye hamara ghar mein rahega. That kind of a philosophy has perhaps gone into our psyche, or some people's psyche. All that we think today is a mixture of our history and the way we've been brought up and our societal atmosphere. But I think over the new generation, the generation that we see today, or the generation before this, and even people from the generation much before that, there have been cases of people breaking this barrier and coming forward. So it's we who have to change our thinking. We can't dwell on other people to do that. We have to remove this fear. If we're talking about men have to remove the fear that someday there will be your wife who will perhaps be more successful than you, or your sister, or anyone who will be more successful. That fear, or your colleague, that fear has to get out of a man's mind as much as the woman has to get out of her mind that she is in any way inferior to the men. So that fear comes from our history, the way we've been brought up, and it can change. It is changing. And okay, there are still pockets in the country and places where this kind of gender discrimination rears its ugly head. But in the corporate world, at least in these multinational companies and in internationally reputed companies like the Tatas or Seiko or any of these companies, I don't think this exists anymore. And even if it does, I think there are enough responsible managers, seniors, who can take cognizance of that and take remedial measures to remove such thoughts. So it is also important in this case, Angela, I would have to say that it is very important for the middle senior management of a company, of a big company, not just the HR, but the middle senior management of a big company, making an effort, to ensure that any kind of these inherent latent discriminations don't come up in the behavior of men or women in their organization. So if they have a team, they have to be conscious of the fact that they are giving an equal opportunity to both. Sometimes inadvertently we will go out, at the expense. I've tried to leave smoking now, but sometimes inadvertently we'll go out for a smoke, and perhaps the woman who would not join, and people tend to bond in that space, and that bond then leads to a coterie being formed. So those kind of things the management has to be very careful about. The management has to be very careful about the fact that they are giving equal opportunity to both the sexes. And in today's corporate world, as a CEO of a company, as a president of a company, for me, a female employee of Seiko is as valuable and as efficient and as capable as any male employee. And if any male is scared of that, that's his a weakness and not the lady's weakness. And the manager or the boss has to take cognizance of that fact.
Thank you so much. This was excellent. Very nice. So I'll take 2 more minutes of your time. That's okay. There's another question that has come, similar questions that are coming in. So about the mental strength, in your experience, who's mentally more strong? Do you think mental strength is higher, men or women in general?
To be very frank, I think we can't generalize here, because we can't be sexist on both sides. We can't say the woman is this thing because of certain examples. But definitely in our country and in other countries over the last few decades, the woman has had to break more barriers than men. It's a simple fact. There is a revolution going on around the world. I'm slightly digressing from the topic, called Black Lives Matter. I think you all are all aware of that, right? Now, there are people there who are protesting about, we are talking about gender, that is about color. And, something there, one of the speakers there in the US was saying something very pertinent here, which also applies to this conversation. He said that, as white people, the white people would say, so when we are protesting Black Lives Matter, we don't mean that the white people don't struggle, that white people don't have problems, that only the black people have problems, that the white people have not worked hard for their success. So just by saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that the white person has not had to work hard for the success they have achieved. But it is a reality that there are certain privileges that the white person inadvertently has enjoyed because he is white. And the black person has perhaps been forced to withstand because of just the color of his body. And that's a reality in the world. So even in this case, the woman perhaps has had to encounter obstacles, which a man would not even consider an obstacle to. It is not in his psyche. It is not an obstacle. So if it is not in his psyche, he does not consider it important. And so if you ask a man, if I say, my answer to Anjula's question would be the woman today is definitely, or over the last few decades, has definitely been the person who is more stronger in the mind. In general, I think the woman is stronger. And I'm not saying this just to please my wife or Angela, but it is the truth, I feel. And it really reflects also in the workplace to a great extent, because just a simple example, when in India also, even today, when a person is working outside the house in a corporate job, when they come back home, they're expected to cook for the family. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah,
right, after a full-time job, they are when both the people come back home, in most of the cases, it will be the woman who will go to the kitchen and start cooking for the meal for the day. But both have worked hard, both have put in the effort during the day, and it's not rare to find a man putting on the TV and having a bath and lying down, while the lady who has come back from a similarly taxing job goes into the kitchen. Now that is changing. It is changing, but it has not fully changed. Let's be honest about it, right? So if you ask me, the hurdles that a woman has to encounter in life today, even today, is far greater than what a man typically does. And like I'm saying, you can't generalize here. It's a basic understanding. It's different from case to case. And so we should honor that. We love saying a woman is great when it is my mom, right? When it is our mothers, we say, wow, she's this epitome of greatness. She's this epitome of, efficiency, love, everything. Why can't we say that about a colleague who's with us and who's doing a similar job? Why can't we have that same respect for that colleague who's a lady? The day we have that, we will understand that this barrier is broken. And like I said, there are inherent things that we as men don't feel as obstacles, which women have to go through every day in their work or personal lives.
Thank you so much, Niladri. I'm really sorry I took more of your time. I had said 20 minutes, but there were questions. And they were, a lot of them coming in a certain direction, so I thought I would ask those. There's some others, which I think we'll leave for today. We've taken more time than we had said. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
Sir, madam, Harish.
Yes, sir.
Sir, it's a great moment for me as well as for all participants, I can say. Thanks for accepting our invitation, and thanks for being here with us. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks on behalf
of you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess we'll go back to what we were discussing. This was very interesting, and it was a different perspective. I guess I have to finish my PPT, so I'll go, but I just have a few more slides. I think we'll have more of discussion then. I think it also, the way the talk has gone, I think we need to have more discussion there. So maybe one or two points I'll make, and then we'll go to discussion. Let me just share the screen back to what I was talking about. So we were talking about some of the things that some of the things that Mr. Majumdar was talking about, right? Gender stereotyping, and very interestingly, he said you have to stop being afraid, and that was very, very interesting. And my last point was saying that oftentimes when we do that, when we put wrong kind of stereotypes, and when we are afraid to put things correctly as they stand and without actually putting any gendered connotation to things, we do tend to have more successful relationships. And that holds everywhere, either when we're working with a colleague, when we're working with at home, and even in the larger social setup or organizational setup. So coming back to, I'm sorry, I know it's a bit of a disconnect, but just coming back to what I was talking about as to what women face, some of it he has already sort of talked about, which was largely gender stereotyping, and we were working towards that direction. But there is also one big role that women play, and which is it's an evolutionary role. It is not gender. It is the primary caregiving role. That's true, right? And research has interestingly shown that in cultures, this is not Indian, this is a Latin American study, where they looked at different cultures, and they found that in cultures where men strongly believed that caregiving is a female duty, there were actually less of depression and less of stress in men. So the more, and in cultures where conversely, where they say that no, each one has to share each other's role, the level of stress and level of depression is much higher. That is also a reality. Right? Now, so the point is that, I mean, this evolutionary role of primary caregiving, is it actually, it's a fact that women have to be or should be biologically the primary caregivers for children, or it's just a socially constructed phenomenon, right? So I had a huge look at a lot of studies. I looked at the studies trying to figure the social studies as well as biology, genetics, and those kind of studies. And what I found was that no, to put it in a very broad and clear way, that mothers definitely are more genetically knowledgeable about the child. That is a reality. They may not be nurturing or more empathetic. Right? It's not necessary that you need to be, women have to be are more nurturing or empathetic. Oftentimes, men are the ones who are more nurturing and empathetic towards, I mean, when we're looking at handling children. But when it comes to more knowledgeable, knowing more, therefore figuring out how to handle the situation, the studies do find that it is not just a social artifact, a social construct, but there is a genetic component of knowledgeability that definitely goes, women do tend to know a little more. So therefore, their primary caregiving role in that sense has an evolutionary perspective as well. Okay? So therefore, coming to all of this, the talk as well as what I was saying, I mean, something that women, I mean, in that sense face, and I found it very interesting, trying to fight stereotypes and figuring out home as well as workplace together, how to balance the whole thing. You know, this was, somebody had said that you stuck somewhere between trying harder and why bother, because there's so much of stress and burden that comes on it, because you have to manage both. You have to manage the evolutionary part of what you're part of, and the stereotyping and the workplace pressures. So women face this. And then there was the Facebook CEO said something very interesting when she says that keep your foot on the gas pedal. That is how you start operating, right? Because it turns out if you do that, you might get a promotion, you might make enough money, you might have a more interesting job or get promoted, and you hope for that. Therefore, at that time there'll be more flexibility for you to survive, and you keep sort of going both ways. You leave before you leave, as I said, don't leave before you leave. You should just keep leaning in, keep your foot on the gas pedal. So, so all of this aside, so that we were basically talking of this particular concept as to where do the differences come from? Why is it that there is a whole concept of talk of gender? Right? This women in leadership, gendering the whole concept of leadership. And therefore, I was sort of talking about how there are these unintentional biases that are there, and the fact that there is a bit of stereotyping that exists. And of course, there's also a fact that women have to see to the children. So looking at home and doing cooking is not what I'm talking of here. When I say primary caregiving role, I'm talking of looking after children. I'm not talking of cooking, cleaning, and the rest of the things that come up in managing a household and the complexity of a household. I'm just talking of when they are the primary caregivers, and biologically, yes, they are more knowledgeable about it when it comes to looking after children. So we were talking basically about that. Now, this is some very interesting study I found about how women and men look at what are the challenges to their career. So when women were asked about challenges to career advancement, they talked of lack of support of supervisors, exclusion from informal networks, which Mr. Majumdar was also talking about, when he said that, you know, when you're smoking or when you're coming together, you end up forming a small, group. And men tend to do that, backslap each other and say, let's go for tea, let's go for coffee. Women get excluded, and these are informal networks, right? So those kind of things, or lack of senior role models, the cultural biases, etc. Men identified, interestingly, different challenges for women. They said they were unwillingness to change. In organizations, companies, or if they were in a situation, they were hesitant to take that forward. And if you remember my first research that I had said, that had also, they were explorers and not advancers when it came to openness and willingness to explore new things. That came up interestingly in this research also. Several research, actually, same things are coming in again and again. Then they also said that they had an ineffective leadership style, which was a red alert there, that are they talking in terms of assertiveness? Because that is what's coming up again and again, so they're not assertive enough. And the men's discomfort with being a collaborative attitude, right? Somewhere, but however, the men felt that they are not effective in their leadership style, maybe most probably not assertive enough. And therefore the whole decision making thing that had come, saying that they are indecisive, they are not very decisive, they don't take a decision and are fine with the consequences that come. Sometimes decisions can go wrong, sometimes right. Men take it faster, they take a call and they move forward. Women hesitate to do that. So that was, I think, most probably. And the third thing they said was, very interestingly, that they don't have enough experience, which is again counterintuitive, a red flag, because you don't give them enough opportunities in the workplace. This is also for our principals and senior people who are part of the group who are listening to me, that sometimes you don't give them enough roles and then say they don't have enough experience. You don't include them as member of committees and then they say they're not capable of chairing a committee. That thing, a kind of a circular loop that comes in, and therefore men have to be alert on. Our senior people who are sitting in senior positions have to be alert on this particular aspect. Then, okay, so hopefully this is my last slide. I'll forget this one. I think, yeah, we'll stick to this one. So some things very interesting that I found when somebody asked about the ICICI leadership as well, were that women leaders, it was found, don't demonstrate feminism. They don't behave like feminists. They don't. Right? They don't make men uncomfortable by overly asserting their gendered identity. Where they say, I'm a woman, so therefore this, or they don't do that. You would see, even in India, if you will see, most of the women leaders, you would always see them as mild people. They'll be wearing saris, they'll be whatever their culturally context that they are in, and they don't overly sort of demonstrate a very feministic or very belligerent kind of attitude. So women leaders are seen to not demonstrate feminism, right? They are feminists and they do strongly believe in their gender and they're extremely supportive, but they do not, in that sense, are overtly, their experience, and I would totally understand why. The experience is that there is no good or bad. It's not as if men are bad and women are good and men do. It's nothing like that. And Mr. Majumdar had also put point. There really is nothing like that. It's just that there are some women who are, that when he said, don't stop being afraid, I think that kind of highlights that. The other thing is that the second generation bias leads to unintentional discrimination of women against women, in the sense women also end up doing this unintentional discrimination against their own selves. I'll tell you a very, very recent example of what my friend faced. So there was a group of two leaders, one male and this friend of mine, who were leading a team. Now, what happened was, in this team was extremely ineffective because the male leader was not performing to the mark. Now, the decision that got taken by the head of the woman here unintentionally was to disband, and there was a male and a female, they together, both vice presidents, decided to dismantle the team because it was ineffective, because the male person who was heading the project leader was ineffective. Now this, my friend, got up and said no. So, but what has happened is, when I'm performing fine, why should I face this disbanding of this thing? It is not fair. She went to the woman leader, she went to the woman vice president, because sure, she'll understand. He says, why are you doing this? You're undermining my performance by dismantling, you telling everybody that I was also ineffective, whereas the reality is different. And then the woman leader said, yeah, I never thought about it. It was suggested and I went ahead. And who suggested it? Obviously the male person, and she also thought it was fine. And the result was that the whole dismantling of the team actually supported the male ineffective person who was not doing very well, supported his kind of, blending in without actually anybody pointing big fingers at them. And she lost out because her performance also got undermined. So, and she pointed this out to the woman leader. She said, see what you have done, right? Unintentionally, you have actually given me this, you've discriminated against me and given me this mark, which is not a big black mark, but it is still there. So this kind of a second generation bias that happens, where unintentionally women also discriminate against women. We don't realize that we are doing this, we're leading this second generation bias ourselves. Then, of course, Niladri has already talked of limited by networking opportunities, because, males backslap each other, go have a smoke together, have tea together. And because there are less women, they don't include 2 women in a department, they won't get included. The men will go on one side, women will go separately. And this networking opportunities and sharing, etc., gets lost. And of course, one more thing that a lot of studies are showing, that outdated policies for women, flexi time, part-time, job sharing, it should also be for men, right? Because when you don't let these opportunities also open up for men, you force the women to be inflexible and forced to take these options. Whereas if there were enough men also who had these opportunities, women in the counter, say the wife who's working, will also, or a sister or mother or whoever support that they need, will also have the opportunity to therefore do a full time. So that is one thing that came out again also in research, that these policies for women are pretty outdated. They should actually be for both genders. So that is it. I think this is the thing. Some of the my slides is, how do leaders move ahead? Women leaders, first thing, they don't make men, they make men comfortable with women around. Right? They don't do it, they don't sort of make men uncomfortable around them, the leaders. Secondly, they don't worry about stereotypical attributes. They draw on personal individual strength. They don't bother about what stereotype is. If I am not a nurturing person, I don't have, that is it. I'm not going to be a nurturing. And this is my personal thing. I'm not very nurturing. And so therefore, I often face the students will come to me crying, thinking, oh, I'll be motherly to them. And I tell them, no, this is a professional workspace. If I want to be motherly, I'll be motherly to my children. Here, you are a student, I'm a supervisor, we'll deal with it like that. And in that sense, I draw on some other personal strength to move ahead, and not the stereotype, oh, I need to be, because I'm a woman, I need to be nice to the student, I have to be, show empathy and nurturing. It doesn't come naturally to me. I don't go take that at all. Right? And people live with it, I live with it. The people on the other side, they understand and they adjust. So then the other is, third thing is that they have to be proactive in planning your career development. Don't wait for others to say, okay, now this, I will look at, no. Plan it proactively and use leadership qualities and as a process to move ahead. Recognize diverse abilities and experiences of your own and others. Right? Which I had also talked yesterday when we were talking about this leadership in decision making. You have to understand what is the ability of that person, whether it's whatever the gender. This stands for both male and women and male leaders. Right? The idea is to recognize what is the ability and use that ability from that individual that is the leadership quality. Of course, start changing the organizational cultural assumptions. Yeah, that is what is also very strong. And they say that instead of being very feministic and being an activist kind of a thing, at your level, you start changing the organizational cultural assumptions about work success. Right? You say, okay, and somewhere you try and take your people along, put some facts up front, and help people understand these cultural assumptions, which may not be right, and help them also, in the sense, work actively around changing those assumptions. So this is it. Let me just have a quick look at the time. Well, we have 10 minutes of questions. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing now and I'll take questions. Have I stopped sharing? I guess I have.
Yes, madam. Yes.
I'll be happy to take questions. It has to be interactive. Otherwise, it's no point for me to keep talking about these things. And then, I also need to know what people feel about it. Do you agree with what I have said? Or do you disagree with what I have said? Or what about the men in the team? I mean, people who are listening. Do you agree with what I have said? Or do you say that, no, it's not really like that? Anybody who would challenge me, I'd be happy to, I look forward to a challenge. I'd be happy to know that what I have said is not true. So there's one question which says, limited by networking opportunities. Ma'am, I feel women are stronger on this front. So Dr. Usha, will you please just elaborate? I'm so happy to see this comment because I'm really, really happy to see this. And can you please unmute your mic and just tell me what you mean by this? Can you just elaborate, please?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, I don't agree with this statement that women have poor networking. I'm just opposite to it because I feel because of their gut feeling and everything, women are stronger on this front. They have a better networking.
I'm so happy to hear this. I'm so happy. I totally agree with you that I could be wrong there. For someone, maybe I'm limited by what I understand and what people have sort of said in general. But what your point is true. What you're saying is true. With more women coming in, and the fact that they have more, they're more intuitive. Right, that intuitiveness may actually be leading to better networking. The network may not be very large, but most probably it is a stronger network.
Definitely, ma'am. This
Yeah,
is my feeling. This is
I
what
totally agree with you. No, I agree with you. I think what you're saying has merit because that's true. I mean, women do have stronger networks. That is right. That has also come up in research, if I'm not wrong. I think what I got limited in my saying when I said networking because I meant more in terms of reaching out to larger people, and especially I mean men. If there are 12 people in a department, 10 men and 2 women, these 10 interact in terms of numbers more, and the 2 interact in numbers. So number wise, it looks like the networking is small, but you're right. If you go into the quality of the network, then it's possible that women have maybe stronger or have equally good networks. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So there is another question that has come, that the women who is everything at outside, why is she nothing at home? Sudha has asked this. Yeah, it's a very, you asked a question which doesn't have a simple answer, frankly, because when you are at a workplace, you are dealing with in a very different context, and that context has very different dynamics. So suppose you in a workplace you're facing a very neutral set of dynamics where the context is of doing some actions and there is no emotion here. You're doing actions at the workplace and then it's a neutral environment. You're asked to do X and you finish it, and that is how it works. The context of home is a little different. There are emotions involved with it, and everybody's emotions are there: their children, their in-laws, their women, the man, parents. The problem comes most probably why women let go or women act differently while they feel empowered at workplace but they don't feel empowered in the home. Is cultural, because culturally they feel they have stereotyped their own selves to be in a certain way. And my personal experience actually frankly is on that front, where we end up stereotyping our own selves. Are we wrongly stereotyping ourselves and mess up our relationships? And so that is one, is cultural because we're stereotyping our own self. The other is of course the fact that there are emotions involved, right? And therefore also everybody has to tread carefully, and there's this dynamics of emotional supremacy, right? Whose emotions and things etc will be more looked after versus somebody else's. So these are two things which actually make a woman a little more difficult to deal at the home front. I would say men also face the same. Let's not gender stereotype this. Men also face a different kind of these emotional dynamics etc at the workplace, at home. But and women they also stereotype and work in their own their things are going a different way. Women, they stereotype and their own selves and they're going in a different way. But that is the basic difference. The context is different, and the thing that you have to do in both is different. One has 0 emotions, other has 1 emotion. I'm putting it as 0-1, though it's not 0-1, but yeah, that is the basic difference. So there's one more question. I think I have a few more minutes. It says, the toughest part in dealing with family who believe that you've got to be the homemaker because you're a woman. How do we face our family in that case? but you would be an ambitious woman. Okay, so I totally understand this is a tough part, and I don't know. I said emotions. That's my way of dealing with it. I have realized that the more emotional you get and less strategic you get, the more you get trapped in this family dynamics and emotions and the stereotyping. The more you are less emotional, distance yourself from the situation and see what works best, you will come up with an optimal solution. And so what I have realized, frankly, to give credit to the family, that if you you figure out, you get out the motion, you see it, and you sort of see, okay, this will settle it, they do give you space to progress. They do. I have seen it in most families, that if you are able to work out your own emotions properly, your own role properly, and you are able to take an perfect decision, no, optimal decision, families will accept it. Men also accept it, children also accept it. The more you give, because you're supposed to be nurturing, empathetic, and things, the more they will also let go. So my suggestion would be, try and balance emotions and action at home as well, just like you do it at the workplace. Take the same perspective and see if you are more effective at the workplace and you have more effective at the home front, and you are able to deal with your ambitions much more better way. And there is another question, networking in professional places among women is limited. Yeah, even if there is, it is more about her multidimensional role that the women play. Possibly. I mean, that I have realized also, that's true. I mean, every time women meet, I mean, there's a lot of discussion on this multidimensional roles rather than professional discussion. But my understanding is men also do the same. Men don't discuss professionally, they just bond. So these meetings, networking places, informal meetings are just bonding, and they'll also discuss politics, this, that, something else, some problem that they're facing. But what happens is that these places actually help you bond with others, you know, have a better understanding of the other, and you bond. So that is what actually happens. So men also don't discuss the work typically. They also, I mean, I don't know, I mean, Harish and others, there's so many men in this, they will be able to tell us better. Right, that I understand that it's basically just informal, you know, bonding for men and women both. Now there's a so, Dr. Usha, what you're saying is very correct, and I think Nilandri Majumdar has also said that you have to stop being afraid. Right? He said something very interesting. He said what the woman thinks she can do is what she can do. Right? He says, therefore, you have to stop being afraid. And you're very right when you say that it all depends on an individual, the way a woman manages. And some of the tricks of managing it is to understand what the context is and see if you can get out. I mean, as I said, house context is very emotional and cultural. Work context is different. And you see if you can use some of the effectiveness of your work context in the house as well. I think that is, some tricks are there to manage this. And if you can learn the trick, be less emotional, I guess you will be, and you know, get less emotions in both the places. I feel women are able to be more effective there. So is there, but that I think there are no other questions. Anything else? So there is one more question, Dr. Mohammed. Is it necessary to differentiate women and men in the advancement technology, as women are equally challenging men in all sorts? You very correctly saying that. Is there actually, frankly, I said no. At the first level, no, it is not necessary to differentiate women and men. You're very right. With technological advancement, it really doesn't matter. Those things have kind of disappeared to a large extent. The initial gender stereotyping that happened actually has disappeared. And as Nilandri was correctly saying, India is also equally strong. That's his experience and mine as well. We are no less than other countries. Frankly, we are no less than other countries. Men have changed so much in this country. It's amazing. And they're very supportive. Only thing is you need to sort of figure out what is the optimal way of putting things. And so I totally agree with you. The only point that I was making, and that therefore stands, is the second level gender bias that men and women both do to the women. Right? That is that is what is, I think, a little bit to be understood. Right? That the second level gender bias that happens, which is unintentional and it's more latent, that gets missed and unrecorded and unrecognized. So I think we've reached our time limit.
Yes, madam. I think there are no more questions in the chat box. Dear participants, any more questions from your side? I think no. Madam, my sincere thanks to you for your valuable time for 2 sessions, and you brought in one more beautiful session in between, that is from Neeladri sir. I didn't expect that it's going to happen in our platform. It was a great moment for me as a coordinator. I feel proud of it, and I'm sure that our participants have enjoyed a lot with the session. And thanks for accepting our invitation. And on behalf of my institution, Government Polytechnic of Nalli, and on behalf of my colleagues and on behalf of all the participants, we would like to submit a sincere thanks for your time and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I'm sure that I will come back to you again and again. This is just a beginning from my side. I'll be conducting many more this kind of events in the near future, and I request you to extend your kindness and guidance in the future as well.
Definitely, it was my pleasure, Harish. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, dear participants. Please join us back at 12 sharp. Have a nice day.